I saw in the church, when I went in, I saw a little, let's say 20, maybe 10, 15 people, and they were doing truly worship, okay? Because they were saying the rosary at the altar. And these people, I saw them, I said they were really worshiping God. In about half an hour or more, I saw people come in, and it was like when Jesus told them, "Get out of my Father's house."
Yeah, some churches are like marketplaces. When you go there before the actual celebration of the liturgy begins, it's like a total mess. Everybody is talking, whatever. The priest is also shouting, the people. So we'll see what the Pope says about that after the prayer. Okay, so the church building, the Christian house of God, comes into being. So it's always important to keep in mind that the living church has always been known from the very beginning as the disciples themselves. But the place where they meet, which houses them, is also called the church. But it is church because of the assembly, the people assembled there. Okay. So the church building, the Christian house of God, comes into being in complete continuity with the synagogue, and thus acquires a specifically Christian newness without any dramatic break through communion with Jesus Christ, the crucified and risen Lord. So that's why we are studying these things, because if we don't know how the synagogue was arranged at the time of Jesus, we cannot know very clearly what we do in our Christian liturgy and how our churches are arranged, or the development of church arrangement came to be. So it's very important to go back and study these things so that we appreciate what we have. In many cultures, which are basically like, tight cultures, there are so many things people do culturally. But then, eventually, it's just passed on, and some people don't question why they do certain things, so they just do it because this is what we do. So you ask them, why do you do ABCD? Well, that's what we do. Why do you do it? That's what we do. This is our culture. I know, but why do you do it like that? They no longer know why they do it because the elders maybe didn't explain to them, or they didn't listen to the elders, but they keep doing things that way because it's our culture. But eventually, you will lose that culture because the things you do are meaningless to you. They are mechanical, you just do them, they have no meaning. So if someone else comes and brings in something new and says, "Oh, this looks good," you will simply acquire that. Because you don't know why you do what you do. And so it has no value. So as Catholics, we must know why we do what we do in order to understand its value. So to avoid these crazy innovations, so, "Oh, I went to a church in California, I saw them do this, let's do it in our liturgy here." Why do you do it? Because it looked good, it was inspiring. Why do you do it? Does it have a place in the rite of Mass? Well, we have to make people, excited. We have to, work out people. Mass is always boring, so we have to make things that, do things that, work people out. Why do you do it? Okay, so we must be grounded in the culture of the faith. Okay, so yes.
Question. So on what you just said, would it also be right to say that that's an important reason to stick to tradition? Based on the context of what you were just explaining, would it also be right to say that that's a good reason to stick to tradition?
Again, when you talk about tradition, it's important to understand what we mean. What do you mean by tradition, David?
I mean the way that the church has done things since the beginning.
And the way the church has done things from the beginning. It's very important to make this distinction between
sacred traditions.
So usually we lump the two and
Culture.
okay. Now there are sacred tradition is divine revelation. So no one can change that. Now there are customs and traditions, this is a small t, which basically the liturgy acquires through basically cultural ways of doing things. Not that the culture is changing divine revelation, but that it's enlightening it. Okay? Because remember that culture, philosophy, nature itself is God's gift to us. So when divine revelation comes to us, divine revelation does not sweep away our cultures. It simply enlightens them, purifies them, because they are the background upon which it is reflected. So in other words, if one doesn't have already a human philosophical framework in which to receive the faith, we call that reason, okay, kind of framework, then it will be difficult for one to believe. So there has to be a background upon which divine revelation is reflected. Now what happens sometimes is that we, instead of allowing divine revelation to purify our philosophical thinking, our cultures, we're going to talk about ideologies later, maybe in 2 weeks' time, because that's why some people are criticizing the Pope. Okay? Because of their ideological thinking, which has domesticated the truth to the degree that truth is only truth in as far as it filters through my lenses. Okay? So that's why we have to remember that divine revelation comes, it purifies, clarifies our cultures, our philosophies, our ideologies, okay? So that they become pure and we receive God. Okay? So the natural gifts are not swept away. They are simply enlightened and enhanced like reason. So their customs and traditions, okay, you will see that they are acquired through different like cultures, but the essence of sacred liturgy has every rite in the Catholic Church because we have many rites. The dominant one is the Roman rite. Every rite, regardless of its historical development through customs and traditions, every rite has apostolic origin. So we cannot concoct new rites just anyhow. It must have apostolic origin. But in that sense, again, through our cultures, because culture itself is God's gift to us, creation is God's gift, so there will be certain traditions and customs that are acquired through the context of how we worship God. Okay, so for example, if you go to like certain cultures, like in my country at home in Uganda, the way they celebrate Mass in terms of customs and traditions may differ from the American way. Not that the rite is different, okay, but the mode of celebration which comes from their philosophy, way of receiving the mystery.
And Father, isn't that confusing? I mean, does that not create confusion? And also, like then the Eastern Rite, they claim they have that we're the separated and that we have it wrong and they have it right.
No, those are the Orthodox churches. We're talking about the Catholic, the Byzantine Rite. We have Eastern churches that are Catholic.
Yes.
Like the Byzantine Rite is Catholic.
Yes.
It's different from the Orthodox churches. The Orthodox is not Catholic.
Right. They have their own. Yes.
Okay, so those you can have arguments about them and so on and so on. But the Byzantine is Catholic.
It's Catholic.
They're under the Pope.
Okay.
The Syriac Rite.
Okay.
The whatever rite. Okay, they are all Catholic rites. They all have apostolic origin.
Okay.
But because they developed in a particular environment, so their mode of celebration,
is different.
because of customs and traditions, is different. But the essence of the sacrifice is the same. They express the same truth, okay, in different human categories or forms. That's why we have different rites. That's how they develop. different rites. But every rite must have apostolic origin. You can't concoct something new, yes.
Okay, then continue on. How do you do it in Uganda? What's
We're the
something-
Roman rite.
So what's
We're the
something
Roman
different
rite.
that you
But in
do?
some senses, like you can see, like at the offertory, there could be a kind of dance.
Okay.
Because traditionally, when you bring gifts to the king, you don't come like this. There are drums and everything, and so you're joyful as you bring gifts to the king. So things like that.
Okay.
Yes. So sometimes like when you come from the Western culture and you see that, you say, what are they doing? But it develops from their philosophy, the background, the cultural background from which divine revelation is reflected. This is the king. This is how you offer homage to the king. So there are those cultural variations. So those are the traditions we are talking about. For example, just a quick example about what you're asking. What color did Jesus wear during Lent? Huh? But what color did he wear during ordinary time?
He didn't have a closet.
That's what I'm asking. During Jesus' time, there were no liturgical colors. But during ordinary time, you wear green. Okay. So those are not part of divine revelation, but they are very important in explaining liturgical action. So we shouldn't simply dismiss them. Well, now during Lent I can wear whatever I want. No. Okay? It is something very substantial, very meaningful, but they developed out of a particular tradition and customs. Because remember that purple is a color for mourning, but that is from the European way of understanding. In other places, it's not purple.
It's black.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
Okay, so those are some of the customs. Not that they are meaningless, they are very meaningful, but they are not at par with sacred tradition. So that's why these traditions and customs, in the way canon law is arranged, they can change. Okay. Because they are not part of the deposit of faith. So you must always distinguish between tradition, capital T, and the traditions. Okay? Because some people criticize the church. Oh, you keep changing things. Why can't you change the law on marriage? Why can't you change whatever? Because you keep changing things. What they're referring to are traditions and customs. It's that we can't change divine revelation. So the law on marriage is not a custom of the church. Okay? It is scripture. It's divine revelation. Okay?
That's it.
David, you see what you did?
Some churches, when I go to mass, receive communion, they don't allow you to receive in the tongue. They want you to receive on the hand. Is that
You ask the priest why. When he does that, when he refuses to give you the Eucharist from the tongue, okay, ask him why.
or what's the teaching of the church?
The church says, I'll show you after the prayer. Okay? It's right here. Okay, let's take a break. Okay, and we'll read. Okay? Yeah.